Most people are willing to do what's easy. They're willing to do what feels good. They're willing to do what's comfortable. But comfortable is the enemy of greatness. Comfortable is where dreams go to die. The graveyard is full of potential that was never realized because people weren't willing to push through the discomfort of doing what they hated but knew they needed to do. Let me tell you about the discipline of daily practice. Every morning you wake up and you have a choice. You can do what you feel like doing, or you can do what you ought to do. The person who chooses to do what they ought to do, regardless of how they feel, is the person who will eventually have the life they want. The person who only does what they feel like doing will forever be at the mercy of their emotions, their moods, their circumstances. Think about the athlete who gets up at 5 in the morning to train. Do you think they love getting up at 5 in the morning? Do you think they love the burning in their muscles, the exhaustion, the sacrifice of comfortable sleep? Of course not. But they've learned that discipline weighs ounces while regret weighs tons. They've learned that the pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of regret lasts forever. The same principle applies to every area of life. The salesperson who makes one more call when they want to go home. The entrepreneur who works on their business plan when they'd rather watch television. The student who studies when their friends are out having fun. The parent who gets up in the middle of the night to comfort a crying child when they're exhausted. All of these people are forcing themselves to do what they hate in the moment because they understand something profound. Short-term sacrifice leads to long-term reward. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think this is about suffering. They think this is about making life miserable. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about understanding the difference between what you want now and what you want most. What you want now is often immediate gratification, comfort, ease. What you want most is usually something that requires sacrifice, discipline, and yes, doing things you'd rather not do. The wealthy person didn't get wealthy by spending every dollar they earned on things that felt good in the moment. They got wealthy by forcing themselves to save and invest when they would have rather spent that money on immediate pleasures. They did what they hated, living below their means, saying no to impulse purchases, putting money away instead of enjoying it today because they understood that this temporary discomfort would lead to permanent financial freedom. The healthy person didn't get healthy by eating whatever they craved and avoiding exercise. They got healthy by forcing themselves to eat nutritious foods when they wanted junk food, by forcing themselves to exercise when they wanted to stay on the couch, by forcing themselves to go to bed early when they wanted to stay up late. They did what they hated in the moment because they loved the results more than they hated the process. And here's something interesting I've observed. Once you develop the muscle of doing what you hate, once you strengthen that discipline, something remarkable happens. The things you used to hate become easier. Not because they've changed, but because you've changed. Your capacity has increased. Your tolerance for discomfort has grown. Your ability to delay gratification has been strengthened. It's like building physical strength. The first time you lift weights, everything feels heavy. Everything hurts. You hate it. But if you keep doing it consistently, what once felt impossible becomes routine. What once required tremendous effort becomes automatic. The weight doesn't get lighter, but you get stronger. The same thing happens with any discipline. The first time you force yourself to make sales calls, it feels terrible. You hate the rejection, the awkwardness, the fear, but if you keep doing it, you develop calluses on your emotions. You become immune to the very things that used to stop you. You don't learn to love rejection, but you learn to love the results that come from persisting through rejection. This is why I say the successful person has formed the habit of doing the things failures don't like to do. They haven't eliminated the dislike. They've simply subordinated it to something more important, their goals, their dreams, their vision for their future. Now, let me share with you a secret that will make this whole process easier. The secret is in your philosophy. See, most people approach unpleasant tasks with the wrong philosophy. They think, I have to do this terrible thing. That philosophy makes everything harder. Instead, successful people think, I get to do this thing that will move me closer to my dreams. Same task, different philosophy, completely different experience. When you change your philosophy about necessary but unpleasant tasks, you change your entire relationship with them. Instead of being a victim who has to do difficult things, you become a person with a purpose who gets to do the things that will create the life you want. This shift in thinking is not just semantic, it's transformational. Let me give you an example. Two people are both trying to lose weight. They both hate exercise. The first person says, I have to go to the gym. I hate this. This is terrible. Why do I have to suffer like this? The second person says, I get to go to the gym. I get to do something today that will make me stronger, healthier, more confident. I get to invest in my future self. Which person do you think is more likely to stick with their exercise program? The task is the same. The physical discomfort is the same. But the philosophy is completely different, and philosophy determines experience. When you approach something you hate with the philosophy that it's an investment in your future, that it's a privilege to be able to do hard things, that it's an opportunity to grow stronger, the whole experience changes. This brings me to another crucial point, the power of future thinking. Most people live in the present moment when it comes to comfort, and in the past when it comes to their dreams. They want immediate comfort now, but they think their dreams are something that might happen someday, maybe if they're lucky. Successful people reverse this. They live in the future when it comes to their dreams. They make them real and vivid and compelling, and they're willing to be uncomfortable in the present to make that future a reality. When you can clearly see and feel your future self living the life you want, when you can make that vision more real than your present discomfort, forcing yourself to do what you hate becomes not just possible, but inevitable. You're not just doing unpleasant tasks, you're investing in a specific, vivid, compelling future. This is why goal setting is so crucial, but not just any kind of goal setting. I'm talking about creating a vision so compelling that it pulls you through the difficult times. When your future is more attractive than your present comfort is pleasant, you'll find the strength to do whatever it takes. But here's what you must understand. This isn't a one-time decision. This is a daily decision. Every day you wake up and you have to choose again. Will you do what you feel like doing, what you need to do? Will you take the easy path or the path that leads to your dreams? This choice never goes away. Even the most successful people I know have to make this choice every single day. The difference is that successful people have learned to make this choice quickly and decisively. They don't debate with themselves. They don't negotiate. They don't make excuses. They simply do what needs to be done, whether they feel like it or not. They've learned that motivation is nice when you have it, but discipline is what you can count on. And here's something beautiful that happens when you consistently force yourself to do what you hate. You start to build unshakable confidence. Not the kind of confidence that comes from easy victories, but the deep foundational confidence that comes from knowing you can do hard things. When you know you can force yourself to do what you hate, when you know you can push through discomfort and inconvenience and temporary pain, you become fearless in a way that's impossible to achieve any other way. This confidence becomes a foundation for everything else in your life. When opportunities arise that require you to do things outside your comfort zone, you don't hesitate. When challenges come that would stop other people, you keep going. When others are complaining about how hard things are, you're getting things done. You become the kind of person who others look to for leadership, for inspiration, for example. Let me tell you about the compound effect of doing what you hate. Every time you force yourself to do something difficult, something you'd rather not do, you're making a deposit in what I call your discipline account. These deposits compound over time. The more deposits you make, the easier it becomes to make the next deposit. The stronger your discipline becomes, the bigger challenges you can take on. But here's the tragedy. Every time you avoid doing something you know you should do because it's unpleasant or difficult, you're not just missing an opportunity, you're actually making a withdrawal from your discipline account. You're weakening your ability to do hard things in the future. You're training yourself to be the kind of person who gives up when things get tough. This is why small choices matter so much. When you choose to hit the snooze button instead of getting up when your alarm goes off, you're not just getting a few extra minutes of sleep. You're training yourself to break promises to yourself. You're reinforcing the pattern of choosing comfort over commitment. When you choose to skip your workout because you don't feel like it, you're not just missing one day of exercise. You're strengthening the part of your character that gives up when things are difficult. On the other hand, when you force yourself to get up when the alarm goes off, even when you don't want to, you're building the discipline that will serve you in every area of your life. When you force yourself to exercise when you don't feel like it, you're not just building physical strength, you're building the mental and emotional strength that will help you persist through any challenge. This is why I say that how you do anything is how you do everything. The habits you develop in small areas of your life will show up in big areas of your life. If you're disciplined with small things, you'll be disciplined with big things. If you compromise on small things, you'll compromise on big things. Now let me address something important. Some of you might be thinking, Jim, this sounds like a recipe for a miserable life. If I'm always forcing myself to do things I hate, when do I get to enjoy life? That's a fair question, and here's the answer. When you consistently do what you need to do, even when you don't want to do it, you earn the right to do what you want to do. The person who exercises regularly gets to enjoy a strong, healthy body. The person who manages their money wisely gets to enjoy financial freedom. The person who develops their skills consistently gets to enjoy career success and recognition. The person who invests in their relationships gets to enjoy deep, meaningful connections with others. The temporary discomfort of doing what you hate leads to the permanent pleasure of having what you want. But most people get this backwards. They want the permanent pleasure without the temporary discomfort, and that's just not how life works. Here's another way to think about it. You're going to pay a price either way. You can pay the price of discipline, or you can pay the price of regret. The price of discipline weighs ounces, and you pay it early. The price of regret weighs tons, and you pay it late. The choice is always yours, but the price must be paid. Let me share with you some practical strategies for forcing yourself to do what you hate. First, start small. Don't try to revolutionize your entire life overnight. Pick one thing you've been avoiding because you hate doing it and commit to doing it every day for the next month. It might be making sales calls, it might be exercising, it might be studying, it might be cleaning your house. Whatever it is, start with just one thing. Second, do it first. Before you check your email, before you scroll through social media, before you do anything else, do the thing you've been avoiding. Your willpower is strongest in the morning, and if you wait until later in the day, you'll find excuses to avoid it. Third, connect it to your bigger purpose. Don't just think about the task itself. Think about what accomplishing this task will mean for your future. How will doing this thing move you closer to your goals? How will it help you become the person you want to be? When you connect unpleasant tasks to meaningful outcomes, they become much easier to do. Fourth, measure your progress. Keep track of how many days in a row you've done the thing you hate. Celebrate the small victories. Building discipline is like building muscle. You need to see progress to stay motivated. Fifth, find accountability. Tell someone about your commitment and ask them to check in with you regularly. When you know someone else is watching, you're much more likely to follow through on your commitments. But here's the most important strategy of all. Change your identity. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who avoids difficult things, start seeing yourself as someone who does hard things. Instead of thinking, I'm not the kind of person who exercises, start thinking, I'm the kind of person who takes care of my health. Instead of thinking, I'm not good at sales, start thinking, I'm becoming someone who creates value for others. Your identity determines your actions more than your goals do. If you see yourself as lazy, you'll act lazy regardless of what goals you've set. If you see yourself as disciplined, you'll act disciplined, even when it's difficult. This is why changing your self-concept is so crucial to lasting change. Now, let me tell you about the seasons of life and how they relate to doing what you hate. Life is like the changing seasons, and each season requires different things from us. Sometimes life requires us to plant, even when we don't feel like it. Sometimes life requires us to tend and cultivate, even when the work is tedious. Sometimes life requires us to harvest, even when we're tired. And sometimes life requires us to rest and plan, even when we want to be active. The successful person learns to do what each season requires, regardless of their personal preferences. They plant in the spring, even if they'd rather be relaxing. They tend their crops in the summer, even if the work is hot and difficult. They harvest in the fall, even if they're tired from months of work. And they plan in the winter, even if they'd rather be taking a break. Most people only want to do what they feel like doing in each season, and that's why they never get the results they want. They want to rest when they should be planting. They want to party when they should be tending. They want to relax when they should be harvesting. They want to be active when they should be planting. But life doesn't care what you feel like doing. Life rewards those who do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, regardless of how they feel about it. This is one of the fundamental laws of success, and it cannot be violated without consequences. Think about the farmer who doesn't feel like planting in the spring because it's hard work and the weather isn't perfect. What happens to his harvest in the fall? Think about the student who doesn't feel like studying because it's boring and they'd rather be socializing. What happens to their career prospects? Think about the entrepreneur who doesn't feel like making sales calls because rejection is uncomfortable. What happens to their business? In every case, the consequences of not doing what you hate when you need to do it are far worse than the temporary discomfort of just doing it. This is why successful people learn to love the process, not just the results. They learn to find satisfaction in doing what needs to be done, whether they like it or not. Here's something else I want you to understand. The things you hate doing today often become the things you love doing tomorrow, once you get good at them. I've seen this happen countless times. The salesperson who hated making calls eventually becomes someone who loves the art of persuasion. The athlete who hated training eventually becomes someone who loves the feeling of pushing their limits. The student who hated studying eventually becomes someone who loves learning and growing. This happens because competence breeds confidence, and confidence breeds enjoyment. When you're bad at something, you hate doing it because it's frustrating and you don't get good results. But when you force yourself to do it consistently, you get better at it. And when you get better at it, you start to enjoy it more. And when you enjoy it more, you do it more willingly. And when you do it more willingly, you get even better at it. This creates a positive cycle that can transform your entire relationship with difficult tasks. But you have to start the cycle by forcing yourself to do what you hate, even when you're bad at it, even when it's frustrating, even when you don't see immediate results. Let me share with you the story of two people I know. Both of them wanted to become professional speakers. Both of them were terrified of public speaking. The first person decided to wait until they felt more confident, until they were better prepared, until the fear went away. They're still waiting 20 years later. The second person decided to force themselves to speak despite their fear, despite their lack of confidence, despite feeling unprepared. They joined a speaking club and gave a speech every week, even though they hated it, even though they were nervous, even though they weren't very good at first. Today, they're one of the most successful speakers in their field, earning 6 figures a year doing what they once hated and feared. The difference wasn't talent. The difference wasn't luck. The difference wasn't opportunity. The difference was the willingness to force themselves to do what they hated until they became good enough at it to start enjoying it. This principle applies to every skill, every area of growth, every worthwhile pursuit. The beginning is always the hardest part because that's when you're least competent and most likely to fail. But if you can push through that initial period of discomfort and incompetence, you'll reach a tipping point where the activity becomes easier and more enjoyable. Most people quit before they reach this tipping point. They do something a few times, don't see immediate results, don't enjoy the process, and give up. They never give themselves the chance to develop competence, and therefore they never give themselves the chance to develop enjoyment. But the person who understands the power of forcing themselves to do what they hate will persist through this initial period. They understand that temporary discomfort leads to long-term satisfaction. They understand that you have to pay the price of learning before you can enjoy the benefits of knowing. Now, let me address another common objection, Jim. What if I force myself to do something I hate and I never learn to like it? What if it always remains unpleasant? My answer is this: so what? Not everything in life has to be pleasant. Some things are valuable precisely because they're difficult. The value isn't always in learning to love the activity. Sometimes the value is in developing the character to do unpleasant but necessary things. Sometimes the value is in the results the activity produces, not in the activity itself. Sometimes the value is in proving to yourself that you can do hard things. The person who can only do things they enjoy is at a severe disadvantage in life. They're limited to a very narrow range of activities and opportunities. They're at the mercy of their feelings and preferences. They can't adapt to changing circumstances. They can't take advantage of opportunities that require them to step outside their comfort zone. But the person who can force themselves to do what they hate has unlimited options. They can pursue any goal, take on any challenge, adapt to any situation. They're not limited by their preferences. They're only limited by their vision and their commitment. This is true freedom. Not the freedom to only do what you want, but the freedom to do whatever it takes to create the life you want. Not the freedom from discomfort, but the freedom to choose your discomfort in service of your dreams. Let me tell you about the relationship between discipline and freedom. Most people think these are opposites. They think discipline restricts freedom, but the truth is exactly the opposite. Discipline creates freedom. The more disciplined you are, the more free you become. The person who disciplines themselves to exercise regularly has the freedom of good health. The person who disciplines themselves to save and invest has the freedom of financial security. The person who disciplines themselves to study and learn has the freedom of knowledge and opportunity. The person who disciplines themselves to do what they hate when they need to do it has the freedom to achieve any goal they set. But the person who lacks discipline becomes a slave to their circumstances, their emotions, their immediate desires. They lose the freedom to choose their life because they're always reacting to what's happening to them rather than creating what they want to happen. This is why I say that discipline is the bridge between thought and accomplishment, between inspiration and achievement, between necessity and productivity. Without discipline, your thoughts remain just thoughts. Your inspiration remains just inspiration. Your necessities remain unmet, and your productivity remains potential. Here's something else that happens when you consistently force yourself to do what you hate. You develop what I call emotional causes. Just like physical calluses protect your hands from rough work, emotional calluses protect your spirit from the rough of life. When you first start doing difficult things, every obstacle feels overwhelming. Every setback feels devastating. Every criticism cuts deep. But as you persist in doing what you hate, as you continue to push through discomfort and inconvenience, you develop a toughness that protects you from these emotional injuries. You learn that failure isn't fatal. You learn that criticism isn't crushing. You learn that discomfort isn't dangerous. You develop the emotional strength to handle whatever life throws at you because you've been voluntarily exposing yourself to smaller doses of discomfort all along. This emotional strength becomes one of your greatest assets. It allows you to take risks that others won't take. It allows you to persist when others give up. It allows you to maintain your composure when others panic. It allows you to see opportunities where others see only obstacles. But you can't develop this strength by avoiding difficult things. You can't build emotional calluses by staying in your comfort zone. You have to voluntarily expose yourself to discomfort in order to build your tolerance for it. You have to force yourself to do what you hate in order to develop the strength to handle what life demands. Think about this. Every person you admire, every success story you've heard, every achievement that inspires you, they all have one thing in common. Somewhere along the way, the person behind that success forced themselves to do things they didn't want to do. They pushed through fear, discomfort, inconvenience, and temporary pain to create something lasting and meaningful. The athlete trained when they didn't feel like it. The entrepreneur worked when they wanted to rest. The artist created when they felt uninspired. The leader made tough decisions when they wanted to avoid conflict. The parents sacrificed their immediate desires for their children's long-term benefit. None of these people succeeded because everything came easily to them. They succeeded because they were willing to do what was difficult. They were willing to force themselves to do what they hated in service of what they loved. And here's what's beautiful about this. Once you start living this way, once you start consistently doing what you need to do regardless of how you feel about it, you start to attract different opportunities. You start to be seen as someone who can be counted on. You start to be seen as someone who gets things done. You start to be seen as a leader. People notice when someone consistently does what they say they'll do. They notice when someone shows up regardless of how they feel. They notice when someone pushes through difficulties that stop others. And they want to be associated with that kind of person. They want to do business with that kind of person. They want to follow that kind of person. Your willingness to do what you hate becomes a magnet for opportunity. Not because the universe is rewarding you for your suffering, but because you're developing the character traits that create value for others. You're becoming the kind of person that others can rely on, and reliability is one of the most valuable traits in any relationship, business or personal. Let me share with you one of the most important distinctions you can ever learn, the difference between being interested and being committed. When you're interested in something, you do it when it's convenient. When you're committed to something, you do it regardless of how you feel. Most people are interested in success. They're interested in health. They're interested in wealth. They're interested in good relationships. But interest isn't enough. Interest won't carry you through the difficult times. Interest won't sustain you when the initial enthusiasm wears off. Interest won't force you to do what you hate when you need to do it. Commitment will. When you're truly committed to something, you don't debate whether or not to do what needs to be done. You don't negotiate with yourself. You don't wait for motivation. You simply do what needs to be done, whether you like it or not, whether you feel like it or not, whether it's convenient or not. This is the level of commitment required for any significant achievement. This is the level of commitment that separates those who succeed from those who just dream about success. This is the level of commitment that will transform your life if you're willing to embrace it. But here's what commitment really costs. It costs you the right to make excuses. It costs you the right to quit when things get tough. It costs you the right to do only what you feel like doing. It costs you the comfort of mediocrity. Are you willing to pay that price? Most people aren't. Most people want the benefits of commitment without the costs. They want the results without the sacrifice. They want the destination without the journey. They want the harvest without the planting, tending, and cultivating. But life doesn't work that way. Life demands payment in advance. You have to do the work before you get the reward. You have to plant before you can harvest. You have to save before you can spend. You have to learn before you can earn. You have to force yourself to do what you hate before you can have what you love. This is not negotiable. This is not optional. This is one of the fundamental laws of life, and it applies to everyone equally, regardless of their background, their circumstances, or their current situation. The good news is that this law works for everyone who works with it. If you're willing to force yourself to do what you hate, if you're willing to pay the price of discipline, if you're willing to choose temporary discomfort over permanent regret, then you can achieve anything you want. The question isn't whether this works. The question is whether you'll work. Will you do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not? Will you choose the path of discipline over the path of regret? Will you force yourself to do what you hate in order to have what you love? The choice is always yours, but remember this, not making a choice is also a choice. Choosing to wait until you feel motivated is choosing to remain where you are. Choosing to do only what you feel like doing is choosing to accept whatever life gives you rather than creating what you want. Time passes regardless of what you choose. A year from now, you'll be 1 year older regardless. The question is, will you also be 1 year closer to your dreams, or will you be in the same place you are now, still making excuses, still waiting for the perfect moment, still avoiding the things you need to do because you don't like doing them? The person you'll be 1 year from now is being created by the choices you make today. The life you'll have 5 years from now is being shaped by the habits you develop this month. The success you'll achieve 10 years from now is being determined by your willingness to force yourself to do what you hate starting right now. This is your moment. This is your choice. Will you be the person who does what needs to be done, or will you be the person who does only what they feel like doing? Will you be the person who forces themselves to do what they hate in service of what they love? Or will you be the person who avoids discomfort and settles for whatever comes their way? Your future is waiting for your decision. Your dreams are waiting for your commitment. Your potential is waiting for your discipline. The only question that remains is, what will you choose? The power to transform your life is in your hands. The ability to achieve your goals is within your reach. The opportunity to become the person you want to be is available to you right now. But it all starts with your willingness to force yourself to do what you hate. Make that choice. Make it today. Make it right now. Your future self will thank you for it, and your present self will be stronger because of it. The time for excuses is over. The time for action is now. Force yourself to do what you hate, and watch as your life transforms in ways you never thought possible. That's the message I want to leave with you today. That's the principle that can change everything for you. That's the key to unlocking your potential and creating the life you've always wanted. Force yourself to do what you hate, and everything you love becomes possible.